motherfuckers. Taxi.
Okay, man, we're looking around.
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
Roughly 3 weeks ago, emergency services were called to the home of Kentucky Senator Mitch McConnell. Was caught by TMZ. Since that time, Senator McConnell has not been seen or heard, raising substantial questions about his current condition, and some even questioning whether he's still alive. Then on Sunday, his office released a photograph of him with his wife, former Transportation and Labor Secretary Elaine Chao. Of course, the conspiracy theorists immediately started to analyze that photo, with some claiming, not me, but others, that it was AI generated. But there's a much bigger story here. When he was first elected to the United States Senate in 1984, Mitch McConnell was just 42 years old. He began serving as the junior Republican senator from Kentucky in 1985. McConnell was a single man at the time, having divorced his wife and mother of his 3 children, Cheryl Redmond, in 1980. In order to secure his seat in the Senate, McConnell had the tall order of defeating incumbent Democrat Senator Walter D. Huddleston. Huddleston had served in that position from 1973 to 1984. McConnell's team ran a controversial series of TV ads featuring bloodhounds searching for Huddleston, who had a high absentee record and had missed votes while making paid speeches. The ad highlighted his absence on key votes on issues like Social Security, the budget, defense, and agriculture. Also highlighted within McConnell's campaign was his strong opinions on national defense. Then, in what was dubbed the upset of 1984, McConnell defeated Huddleston, Kentucky, in the 1984 election by just over 5,000 votes and headed to Washington to embark on what has, without any question, been one of the most successful political careers in Kentucky state history. McConnell is the longest-serving Senate leader in the U.S. history, having served in that position as the Republican Majority Leader from 2007 to 2025. In the years preceding his upset victory in the state of Kentucky, Mitch McConnell took a hardened stance against China, a stance that would dramatically shift following the beginning of his relationship with his second wife, Elaine Chao. In the aftermath of McConnell's new relationship with Chao, the senator radically shifted his viewpoints in order to adapt to a softer stance towards the Communist Chinese Party and its many associates, and to squash anybody who dared to stand up to China's aggression towards the U.S. Interestingly, McConnell also saw his wealth shift dramatically in the years following his election. Upon taking his seat in the U.S. Senate, McConnell's net worth was minimal. Estimates put his total net worth at the time somewhere around $200,000. After serving in the U.S. Senate for 41 years, Mitch McConnell, according to the latest filings, is now worth an astounding $35 million. China had the ultimate ally now in Mitch McConnell as one of the premier leaders in Washington, D.C. for the better part of 2 decades, 20 years in which China made enormous strides to level the playing field against the United States on the world stage, spreading their influence across the globe. Without Mitch McConnell, China wouldn't be the nation it is today. Without their clear influence over the Kentucky senator and Republican leader, it's unclear whether they would currently be competing with the United States for global influence at all. Let's take a deeper look at Mitch McConnell's historic flip-flop on China and how it has impacted our world today. McConnell's hardened stance against China began after he met Elaine Chao. Prior to his relationship with Chao, Mitch McConnell took his many ardent stands against China for several different reasons. As the 1990s approached and George H.W.'s presidency took over for the Republicans' resurgence under Ronald Reagan, China was becoming a very big issue. McConnell supported strict sanctions against Tiananmen Square, the massacre in China, which was a hardline position. The first legitimate action Mitch McConnell took against the Chinese Communist Party as a member of the U.S. Senate was in 1989, when the Kentucky senator voted in favor of sanctions following the Tiananmen Square massacre. McConnell even went so far at that time to sponsor legislation to allow for China's most favored nation trading status, saying that it should be revoked for its human rights abuses. This, by the way, is where Richard Nixon gets a bum rap. You see, at the time that Nixon recognized China, China was a dirt-poor agrarian society with not a non-formidable military, very little indoor plumbing. The rural areas were largely without electricity. It was not until Bill Clinton gave China most favored nation trading status that they would become the superpower that they are today. That status would, of course, be extended by President George W. Bush. When it came to China, McConnell at that point showed no allegiance or affiliation. His opinions aligned with the harshest of the China critics within the Republican Party, and his dissent continued until 1992. Actually, as I was investigating, I was able to dig up a Heritage Foundation publication that was released by Senator Mitch McConnell in 1992. Within that publication, McConnell makes his position on China and its human rights abuses 100% clear. McConnell even called for the United States to do anything and everything in order to protect Hong Kong from the People's Republic of China. The Kentucky senator went so far as to say the United States needs to send a clear warning to Beijing that they would act if there was any encroachment on Hong Kong or Taiwan. McConnell spoke out against Chinese government policies of censorship, holding political prisoners, and arms sales. McConnell at that time was the lead sponsor and author of the United States Hong Kong Policy Act. It committed the U.S. to treating Hong Kong as a separate entity from mainland China. That was introduced in 1991, and he pushed it through, warning that post-1997 risks to Hong Kong's freedom would not be tolerated. Law included monitoring, reporting requirements, and tools for the U.S. Senate to respond if China eroded Hong Kong's autonomy. The senator had repeatedly cited this as the cornerstone of his long-standing China policy. Fortunately for China, Mitch McConnell's hardened stand against them was about to change, seemingly all because of one person, Elaine Chao. Born in Taiwan on March 26, 1953, Elaine Chao's background would lead you to believe she's one of the most accomplished Asian Americans in the history of our country. Chao became the first Asian American to serve as a cabinet member when she was named Labor Secretary under George W. Bush. She served in that position from 2001 to 2009. She went on to serve as Transportation Secretary under President Donald Trump, 2017 to 2021. It was widely thought that former Democrat Congressman Harold Ford would get that position until President Trump had a Capitol Hill meeting with Mitch McConnell, and Elaine Chao walked out with the job. With an MBA from Harvard, Elaine Chao is both educated and well-connected. She's been a member of the Washington, D.C. elite since her marriage to Mitch McConnell and is a mainstay in Washington political circles. It isn't until you examine her deep family ties to the Chinese Communist Party that Elaine Chao's vast accomplishments begin to come into question. You see, Chao's father, who has since passed away, was called James C. Cheng Chao. He founded Foremost Group, a New York-based international shipping company, in 1964. That company specializes in bulk cargo, in other words, ore, coal, and so on, and has heavy operations tied to China. James was a classmate and schoolmate of Jiang Zemin, the former Chinese Communist Party General Secretary, and the President of China from 1989 to 2003. This personal connection reportedly facilitated early business and political access that no one else could get. Today, Foremost is worth nearly $1.2 billion with a fleet of over 30 cargoes nationwide. Angela Chao, that's Elaine Chao's sister, Elaine Chao being Senator Mitch McConnell's wife, served on the board of a subsidiary holding company linked to the Chinese Shipbuilding Corporation, a major Chinese state-owned defense conglomerate central to the People's Liberation Army. Angela also had roles tied to Chinese state banks and trade promotion groups. Elaine Chao's family is extremely wealthy and influential, and serious direct ties to national security elements within the Chinese Communist Party. So when you understand where Elaine Chao come from, you'll understand why Mitch McConnell's views have shifted. Now, it's public knowledge that Mitch McConnell was introduced to Elaine Chao in the 1990s by a man known as Stu Block. Stu Block is a longtime friend of McConnell. Block is a D.C.-based lawyer, real estate expert with extreme political influence, and a true Washington insider. McConnell and Block reportedly became acquainted in the 1960s when McConnell was serving as a political aide. Block is married to a woman named Julia Chang Block, the first Asian American U.S. ambassador that was appointed to her post as ambassador to Nepal by President George H.W. Bush. Julia Chang Block immigrated to the United States at 9 years old in the 1950s directly from China, and was actually the mentor to Elaine Chao, also known as Mrs. Mitch McConnell. This is how the direct connection to McConnell and Chao was made. The married couple invited McConnell and Chao to a candlelight dinner, and well, the rest is history. What more do we need to know about Julia Chang Block? She served as a prominent senior role at USAID. That's the organization that's been completely exposed by Elon Musk and Doge for siphoning billions of dollars in taxpayer funds for ridiculous programs across the globe. Chang Block was also the founder of the United States China Education Trust, also known as USET. USET is a 501c3 organization based in D.C. that aims to improve bilateral relationships by strengthening mutual understanding between the United States and Communist China through education exchanges and leadership programs. That organization has repeatedly attacked President Donald Trump's trade policies. On February 6, 1993, Mitch McConnell and Elaine Chao were married, and following the wedding, McConnell radically shifted his previously hardline anti-China stance to adopt a more pro-China policy model. In 2000, for example, the senator supported legislation which gave permanent favored nation status trading to China and eventually paved the way for the nation to join the World Trade Organization. This is what has made China the economic powerhouse and the military menace that they are today. This move alone is seen as a foundational building block of China's economic plan to challenge the United States on the global stage. That bill locked in lower tariff rates for China, allowing them to pillage and destroy manufacturing in the United States and other key industries in the United States. When we return, we'll continue with the story of Mitch McConnell and how he's empowered our communist Chinese allies, but also how he's gotten fabulously wealthy doing so. I'm Roger Stone. You're listening to the Stone Zone. Next, we'll talk about how Mitch McConnell's support for legislation has cost America over 5 million manufacturing jobs, largely due to the conditions created by his legislation. With China able to raid U.S. manufacturing, companies within our borders struggle to compete and die, while Mitch McConnell got wealthy.